So my name is Natalia. I am a member of the Fostering Connections team. So if you do call through on our phone number, which is 1-800-013-088, it's also right behind me, you will most likely be speaking with myself. So the information that we're going to be talking about today is specifically about the Victorian foster care system. So if you're joining in from elsewhere, there might be a few differences, but just be aware that that's the context that we're discussing. And before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are streaming from today, which for me is the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and extend those respects to any Indigenous Australians that are joining us today. Sovereignty was never ceded, always was, and always will be Aboriginal land. Thank you. And just flagging before I start going into all the details that it is a live chat or a live stream. So please feel free to put any comments, any questions that you have that are, burning that you really want to get out there, and we'll answer them as we go through. So in terms of Fostering Connections, we are Victoria's statewide foster care recruitment campaign and service. So we are run through the Center of Excellence for Child and Family Welfare, as well as sitting under the department. And we support providing information to the public, as well as supporting prospective foster carers to get linked in with an agency by letting you know what the system is like, what to expect, what the next steps are, and linking you in with that agency that is local with you. So anyone can give us a call and have a chat, even if you're just starting to think about it, if you've been thinking about it for a long time. We really do encourage reaching out to us, and you can do that by giving us a call or by going through our website and submitting an inquiry. If you go to our website, you can also submit an inquiry form directly to an agency, which will then link you in with them, and they'll give you a call within about 2 days. And there's a lot of great resources on our website as well. In terms of my role, so I've worked in the foster care sector for about 8 years, and I was doing direct client work with children and young people and foster carers and birth families. So it was a really fantastic and rewarding experience. And so now we're focusing on, linking in the wider community in terms of knowing, how you can support children and young people that need care, learning about how flexible it is, and, whether it's right for you. So hopefully that will provide some answers for you as we go along. In terms of foster care, so foster care is the temporary care of children and young people by members of the community who become trained and accredited as foster carers. So it's about supporting children and young people who are from ages 0 to 18, and you don't have to, have it all set in stone of what ages you want to care for or the type of care you want to provide. That can evolve as you go through the system, but it is very flexible in terms of what you can offer. So generally when a child or a young person comes into foster care, the aim is to return them to family as soon as it is safe to do so. So foster carers play a really key and supportive role in aiding that transition. And then if a child is unable to return to family, foster carers are also able to provide some of that permanency and that stability within their home while those decisions are being made. So in terms of foster care within Victoria, there's over 11,000 children in the out-of-home care system and about 1,500 or more children that are specifically in foster care. And foster care is really, really flexible. So some children might be coming into care for a couple of days and you can provide support that way. Some children need care for longer. So we'll go through those details in a little bit. But the initial entrance into care is always about supporting them to be reunified with their family whenever it's safe to do so. The kids that are in foster care, they've often experienced, most children have been removed because of risk of harm concerns. So they were placed into care as a last resort. So they'd be exploring options of family placements, of kinship care. And then when that's not available, that's when foster carers step in as community members that are opening their homes to do that. So your role as a foster carer is to provide those boundaries, that safety, and guiding them through that journey while they're, having their day-to-day lives continue on, but also navigating that out-of-home care experience when things are uncertain and they're not sure of what's going to happen next. Whether court decisions are, being decided and them helping them have their voice through that. So as a carer, you're there to be with them and walk alongside them, help them feel safe. keep them connected to their culture, encourage their family contact, and being persistent and consistent in your care so that they can feel that safety and stability. So in terms of when you work with a foster care agency, they're always going to match that care to what is the best fit for you. And that's why the recruitment process is so critical, because it allows you to identify what sort of care you want to provide and also get as much information to make sure that you can be the best care that you can be. And there's a lot more information about this on our website, which you can download our information pack, read a few of our blogs and things like that. So this month we had a really wonderful blog that highlighted some of the great work that foster carers do to support children and young people. And that's by giving them opportunities to heal and thrive. And some of that occurs through trauma-informed care. So we do have a really recent blog post that we posted, and I think it'll be linked in the chat for you guys to have a look through that to get a little bit more information in terms of what that looks like and what some of the wonderful work that carers do to support people, support children and young people, and also how the agency joins in on that to assist you. And let's see if there's any questions. I've been talking for a while. So no questions just yet. So in terms of who can become a foster carer, if you're single, if you're in a relationship, whether you're in a share house, whether you own your home, working full-time, not employed at the moment, as long as you have a spare bedroom and you have that commitment that you want to engage with a child or young person that's in care, we do encourage you to explore this pathway. So foster carers come from all backgrounds and life stages. You could be a same-sex couple, you could have children of your own. It's literally just about wanting to provide that support for a child and be there with them as they go through that journey. And your experiences and diverse experiences are a part of that and a part of supporting children. So we do really encourage people from all backgrounds to connect with children in care. And your role as a foster carer is also supporting a child to connect with their culture and their identity. So the agency supports you in that, and also sharing your own traditions and customs within your home with a child. So any questions about that before we continue on? In terms of the process to becoming a carer, so that initial qualifying factor is having that spare bedroom. So it's a room that is a space that can be specifically for the child. So it's something that's available for them. It wouldn't be a room that you're moving someone else out of. It would be there so they can have their own safe space while they're in your home. So then you can link in with us. You can go through our website or give us a call. You'll then be able to have a chat, have any of your questions answered that are specific to your circumstance. We'll walk you through the process, and then we will refer you to an agency that's within your area. And when you are linked in with that agency, they'll give you a call within about 2 days. And we always encourage everyone to check their junk folder because sometimes emails can get redirected into that. So just to be aware of that. And then the agency will give you a call, they'll have a chat with you, and then they'll invite you to an information session. And it is really encouraged that your household attends if there are multiple members in your household to start getting the information shared through to everyone. And when you go to that information session, whether it's online or in person, depending on where we're at with COVID, you'll get to meet the team, you'll hear about their process, what it looks like, what the training looks like. And then once you've completed that, you can move on to the training. And the foster care training, there is no cost to you. So it is just your time, and it is very foundational. It covers different types of care, your role as a carer, how to support children with their family contact, with connecting to culture, as they transition out of care, supporting their education, supporting their behavior. So it is very comprehensive, and it gives you a lot of that foundational knowledge to assist you in moving forward in your journey, as well as identifying, now that you know more, what sort of care you want to provide. So that's a process that generally people find that they start thinking, maybe they came to it thinking they wanted to do only respite care, and then they do the training and they've come through that and they're like, actually, I think I really want to do short-term care, and they can expand on that a little bit when they move on to the next step. So it really does evolve with you. once you have completed the training, and that stays with you. So if you wanted to pause at that stage and then come back to it a few months later, you wouldn't have to redo that process, but it would be best to have a chat with the agency about that. But once you've completed the training, and it is recommended that all household members do that, you then move on to the assessment. And the assessment is for yourself, and if you're within a relationship, for the both of you to who are going to be providing that care. So it's for the primary caregivers. If you have children that are in the home, they also will be a part of the training in a much smaller capacity. So someone from the agency will have a link in with them throughout the process to see what they understand and what they're expecting from fostering when a child comes into your home. But the training is essentially that space to identify what your needs are, what your preferences are in terms of providing care, and how you're going to respond to various scenarios with a child with you. What sort of support would you need? What are your strengths? What is that going to look like? In addition to the assessment process, there also is a home and environment check, which will happen with the agency staff member coming to your home to make sure that the home is suitable for a child to live in. And the expectation is that whatever preference of care you're identifying, so if you're flagging that you want to care for children that are, under 2, you'd be expected to have things in your home once you've been approved to support that age bracket. If you wanted to support school age children, you'd be expected to have a bed and stuff available for them. So only until once you've been approved with that. In addition to that, in the process, you're also expected to do police checks and a working with children check. So you will then sorry, we've got a question in the chat, so I will get to that in a second. But yeah, so you do complete working with children's checks and probity checks like that, but the agency does that for you, so there's no cost for you there. And they explain all of that for you. And in terms of different types of care, so there are 4 different types of care. The first one generally being respite, and that's what a lot of foster carers start with. So respite is more planned, short bursts of care. So it could be a weekend, it could be school holidays, it could be that you're a respite care for a child that's in a long-term placement, which we've had some really wonderful carers do that, where this young boy was going to his respite care once a month, and they were having opportunities to do really exciting events. They were going to shows, they were having going to sporting events, and it was a really beautiful thing that this little boy was always looking forward to. So you can provide respite care for the same child, or some people who have a very busy schedule and perhaps they work full time and they know that if I can set this one weekend a month or however often I'm available to know that a child will stay with me, and regardless if it's the same child or a different child, then the agency knows and they can plan for that. So it can also work in that respect. So respite tends to be that planned shorter stays for a child to stay with you. Emergency care is another type of care. So that is generally less planned. So it could be you getting a call at 2 p.m. saying, we've got Cindy, she's 5 years old, and she needs somewhere to stay tonight. She looks like she'd be a really great match for your household. Here's all the information, because you get to read through everything. What do you say? Would you be able to take her? And then you can organize what that would look like, how long she could stay, what drop off would look like, what are her favorite foods. You can ask questions and get more information. But emergency care tends to be more for children that do not have a stable placement for that evening, and perhaps they've been just recently removed from their parents' care and they need somewhere to stay quite immediately. So considering whether you're available for emergency placements on the weekend and things like that is also really important to consider, whether you'd be interested in getting called later in the evenings or in the middle of the night to take a placement. All of that is worked around what works for you. So some carers have a point of when they get a phone call. Some people are like, call me whenever, and I want to be able to support. And then those placements can happen. Short-term care is often for children whose court proceedings haven't been finalized just yet. So it could be anywhere from a couple of weeks to a couple of months. And so those are children that the decision hasn't been identified whether they're returning to family or whether they're staying in long-term care. are going into kinship care. So those foster carers are there with them day in, day out, supporting them while they're still going to school, and being there while they're on that journey. And then long-term care is a care with for a child until the age of 18. So it's been identified that they can't return to their family, and then you're providing that permanency. You're supporting their family contact with you, and being with them for that journey, if that's what's identified by the courts. So it could be until they turn 18. It could be until they transition, if it was agreed for them to transition to a different placement. So it does vary, and it's always guided by yourself, and you're always working with the agency as well. Does that answer your questions? And I see we did link a blog in there for if anyone wants to read a little bit more about the different types of care and so forth. So there are some reading materials for those of you that like to do your research. Great. So if there's no more questions, I might jump into some of the myths that are very, very common. So the biggest myth I've always come across when I was working with someone as they were becoming accredited to be a carer is how flexible, that it's not flexible. So a lot of people assume that if you're a foster carer, you have to provide full-time care. And going through the different types of care identifies how flexible it is. So I've worked with a lot of foster carers who they maybe did short-term care for a couple of years, and then they got a new role and identified, look, I need to step back from this for a moment, and I'm just going to be doing respite and emergency. There are people that start off with doing respite and emergency, and then once they've gotten more used to the system and met different carers and things like that, decide, you know what, we want to take the next step. We're going to take the plunge, and we want to provide long-term care for a child. So it does really ebb and flow with your needs and what that looks like. And the agency's with you every single step of the way. So they'll be making sure that it's the right move forward, how you're going to be supported, and what that will look like. And I see we do have another question. So care goes, so children are adults at the age of 21. We do have the home stretch program, which was just launched recently in Victoria, which allows children in care to receive additional support until the age of 21. So that would be if they were residing with you as their long-term carer past the age of 18, there'd be some additional supports that are still available, or whether they are transitioning out onto their own at the age of 18, they would still get support until the age of 21. So it definitely has extended their support, but the care arrangement, once they're 18, they are adults. And there's a lot more information about home stretch as well. I don't know if we can link that in the chat, but you can definitely find more information about that online as well. It's a really wonderful program, and it's been doing some really great work and support for young people as they're making that transition into adulthood. So we're really excited to see how it continues to progress. Yeah, no worries. Another myth that we come across quite frequently, aside of how flexible fostering is that you can't provide care if you're working, and that's very, very much a myth. So you can definitely be a foster care whether you're working full-time or part-time or studying, or some foster carers are retired. Some people are just taking a break from work, and they want to support children while they're at home. A lot of people's working arrangements have changed following COVID, and a lot of people are at home now working from home. So, they're assessing whether it's the right fit for them now. So it is really flexible. And as you start that journey, the agency will talk to you about the type of care that you want to provide that's suited to your current lifestyle and circumstances. So you'll have your preferences, and then the agency will also have their recommendations. And it's a very collaborative process of how you come to that decision. So while you're going through that final step of recruitment, which is the assessment, you have conversations with the agency about how is this practically going to look like? What is the best fit for my household and the type of supports we would need? And it is very transparent. So the agency will let you know all of their thoughts. You get to read the report. You provide feedback on it, any considerations there. So it is a really collaborative process, and there's generally not too many surprises. And if you have any questions, the agency will always explain all of that for you. You definitely also don't need to be in a relationship to care. So, as I mentioned earlier, the respite care was a single male respite carer who was doing some really, really wonderful work with the children that he was caring for. So, you definitely don't need to be married or in a de facto relationship. Anyone can be a foster carer regardless of your sexuality, your gender identity. Like we really encourage a wide range of cares, especially because your experiences and understanding of how the world works will support children in, thriving and learning and connecting with their identity and understanding what's going on in their world. So it does provide that extra support for children. So definitely don't need to be in a relationship to care. Needing to own your own home or having a really big house is also a myth. A lot of people think, oh man, in the current environment, a lot of foster carers are renting. There's definitely nothing that would be an issue in terms of providing care for that. So the main requirement is having that spare bedroom. So sibling groups can share a bedroom. So if you're caring for siblings, which is also something to consider because you can imagine separating siblings with placements would be quite a challenge for the children and young people that are going through that. So a lot of foster carers that are available to do that can really support children in keeping families together. But if they are a sibling group, they can share a bedroom in your spare room. So that could definitely be a consideration. And then if it's a long-term placement, then you will address that with the agency as they're getting older to identify, what sleeping arrangements are appropriate and what will meet the children's needs. But if you're, conscious about that specifically, you can definitely have a chat with us and discuss a little bit further if there's anything particular with that. Another myth is that you need parenting experience. So as a foster carer, you are supporting children and young people to have that stability and support. So anyone can provide that. So if you're concerned about having exposure to children or experience with parenting, just remember that you do have that training and you have that constant agency support. You meet other carers. A lot of agencies have mentoring programs. There's ongoing training that's available through Care Cafe. There's a peak body, Foster Care Association of Victoria, that works with accredited carers. So you have a lot of wraparound supports there with you. And you're never alone in that journey. So the agency is supporting you as you are there to support the children. Another myth that is quite common is that you can't have children in the home with you. So that's definitely something that we want to myth bust there because children and young people who are in care can benefit a lot from being in a family environment with other children with them. If you have children in your home and it's been identified that it's a good fit, then they can be a part of that process with that child and socialize with them and build really strong relationships. So when you speak with the agency as you're identifying what the best steps are, you go through all those scenarios in terms of how it's going to look like for your household. And talk about all the different things. And that's why it's important that the children are included in that process. Some foster carers have their adult children come to training just to wrap their heads around it and be fully across to be able to support and be a part of that support network. So that's definitely something that you can consider, especially if you have a lot of family gatherings and you know that you're going to be using your family as support, then everyone can be on the same page and everyone's always taken something great out of the training. So there's nothing that can be lost there. We've got a question. Is there assistance to furnish or set up a spare room into a suitable bedroom, or do carers provide everything? So the general rule of thumb is that you prepare to provide for the care that you want to provide, you're expected to have that prepared, but not until after you've been approved. So only once you've had that accreditation approved and you're officially becoming a carer is when that bedroom would be expected to be set up and ready for a child. So until you're approved, that wouldn't be expected. So yes, you are expected to have that ready for the children that you're wanting to care for. So if you were wanting to care for babies, you would be expected to have things in your home to support that. But only once you've been approved, because we wouldn't want you to go through that whole process and then for some reason you don't get to go ahead. But as a carer, you do receive a care allowance, and that allowance goes towards supporting the child while they're with you. So it's going to support day-to-day costs, school expenses, medical expenses. Additional costs also get covered by the agency and by the department. So if there's childcare needs and things like that, you can always discuss what that's going to look like. Agencies will often encourage you to get the rebate for childcare through Centerlink if a child's going to need to access that, or before or after school care. So there are a lot of supports, and that onus isn't all on you as the foster carer. So the agency and the department are there with that. But in terms of having the bedroom set up, it does need to be ready for the age group that you're caring for. And that's for the foster carers to prepare for. Does that answer your question? Yeah, and I think we've just linked in the care allowances details from the department in the chat as well. So if you have a click on that link, it will identify what the starting rates are for the care allowance, and that increases based on age and the child's needs is what you'll see in that link. Any other, okay, great. If you have any other questions, feel free to keep them coming. They're awesome to see, and we do love making sure that this is catered and working for you guys. Another myth that we often want to bust is that fostering is the same as adoption. And I'm not sure if we've linked or blogged that in the chat yet, but fostering and adoption are very different. So when you adopt a child, you become the permanent legal guardian or legal parent of that child or young person. Versus as a foster care, the goal is for children to return to their family. And the department, or there might be a shared arrangement of care between guardianship between birth parents and the department. So you'll have all that information as you continue and support the child. But as the foster care, you are a volunteer, and so you're not the legal guardian of that child. So it is very different in that respect. And those items are defined through what the court orders say in the end for that child in terms of what's in their best interest. Are people with lived care experience encouraged and eligible to apply? Absolutely. So that is a really great question. We definitely do encourage individuals who have experience to explore if this would be the right fit for them. And so when you go through the assessment with the agency, you will be discussing your own experiences and how those have shaped you as a person and how that would impact your ability as a carer and your role as a carer and what that would look like. So you are, exploring how that would impact yourself, how that would impact your household, and what level of care you would be able to provide. So it is a very in-depth and thorough process, which is why the recruitment process generally takes about 6 months, and around COVID we have been seeing around 9 months as well. It can go a little bit faster depending on getting paperwork and things like that done, but we have been seeing at least 6 months, which is a really good thing because it allows you to have a really thorough understanding of what your roles and responsibilities will be while you're going to be caring for children and the expectations there, and to identify the type of care that's going to be the best fit for you. So it is good that it has that length of time involved in that depth there. So hopefully that answered your question. We've got another one. Long-term care arrangements, is the carer able to choose school options, medical care, etc.? So as you go through the assessment, you will be identifying what is in your local network of support and what your preferences could be around that. If a child is in a short-term placement with you, the recommendation would definitely be to keep them in most cases, it would be to keep them at their local school where possible, because as you can imagine, if they've been moving a lot, there's grief and loss with that, there's broken attachments. So we want children to feel that safety and security and stability as much as they can. And school is a huge part of a child's life. They've got their friends there, they've got their teachers there, they've got all their connections there. Perhaps their siblings that live in different places. If you can have them at the same school, that's wonderful. If it's been identified that remaining at that school isn't an option, that's a decision that's done with the agency and with the department. And if family are on that legal arrangement as well, they're consulted in that, and then you would be exploring, what's in the child's best interest. So if they're staying with you long term, and you want to provide permanency for that child, then it might be decided that moving schools is the right option for them. But it really is a case by case thing, and it looks at what's feasible and what's sustainable in your household. So, considering, how long is the distance to travel to school and things like that. So it always is considered case by case to identify what's best for them. In terms of medical care, so you identify your local doctors and things like that. If possible, it's great to keep children linked in with their previous medical providers to provide that continuity of care, and to keep that story there and get any information, because as you can imagine, if children are going through the system and going to multiple practitioners or different providers, some information can get lost or go through the cracks. So we do really want to provide that continuity and that permanency wherever we can possibly. So if we can keep children with their same medical providers, we also do prefer to do that as well. Does that answer your question? But in saying that, as you go through the assessment process, you do identify what your, your local contacts are, what schools are in your area, what childcares, do you have a regular GP that if a child came into your care and they didn't have a primary healthcare provider, would you be willing to take them to your GP and things like that? So all of those things are discussed and identified, and then if you're ever curious about anything, the agency will answer all your questions and help you come to an agreement and an arrangement that's going to work for you guys and for the child. Because the agency has to make sure they're looking after the foster carers as well, so that then you can provide the best care for the children. So hopefully that's answered that question. Do we have any more questions? Yeah, perfect. There are a couple of frequently asked questions that we get, and information that a lot of people like to know in terms of what it looks like once you become a foster carer. So in terms of the information that you get for a child, so a lot of people wonder, what does that look like? Do I get to know their history? Do I get to know, why they're in care and things like that? So when a child comes into care, they have a referral. And as a foster carer, if you're approached to take that child, you will get that referral. And you hold that information confidentially. As your role as a foster carer. And so you will see their family details, generally the reasons why they've been in care, any notes around their previous placements, or what we know about, their behaviors or the things that they love or what works really well, their routine. So some referrals will have a lot of information, and that is built on as children have gone through placements, and foster carers have passed that on. So when you have a placement, you can consider, maybe you just cared for them for a weekend, but you can still note down some really relevant information for the next carer by sharing that with your agency and them sharing with the department, so that the next carer knows that, this bedtime routine worked amazingly for this child, or that their favorite food was spaghetti bolognese and that they were so excited to have it. So little things like that, as you can imagine, can really make a difference for a child when they are going into an unknown environment, and then they can have something that's comforting for them. And if you find something that works, it's great to pass that on and let the agency know that if they're not staying with you longer. As you can imagine, there are instances where there's not a lot of information about the child that's coming into your care, perhaps because they just were removed, and the department hasn't built on that yet. So in that case, you will be the eyes and ears for the agency and sharing what that looks like. So it really does vary, but you're always privy to everything that is available. So whatever is there, you will have access to it. In terms of whether you're allowed to say no to a placement, you always are approached about whether it's the right time for you to provide a placement. So yes, you can always say no. Some foster carers have really huge hearts and they just want to say yes to everything. And we actually don't encourage that, because when you foster, it needs to be the right thing for you. So perhaps if you provide respite or emergency care and you've got a lot of things happening in your personal life and it's not the right time and you get approached, we'd rather that you would say no if it's not the right time for you, rather than saying yes, because then it might not work for the child. And you don't want it to not be a successful placement and then result in another loss for that child if it doesn't go well or if there's a placement breakdown. So it's always important to consider where you're at and what that looks like for you before saying yes to a placement. So managing your self-care is a huge part of training, being honest and transparent with the agency about what you can and can't accept with a child coming into your home during the assessment, and then also beyond when you're a carer, and keeping the agency up to date. Some foster carers take breaks. So they might have provided care for a few years, and then they identify, look, we're going to take a break for this period of time and come back to it. Some people, it is really flexible. So that is the beauty of it. So you're never put in a position where you have to accept a placement. In terms of visa and eligibility there, if you are a permanent resident within Australia, you can provide respite care or emergency care. If obviously if you have a New Zealand citizenship, then that visa enables you to provide longer care. So if you're on a sponsorship visa and you're interested in fostering, that's looking at making sure that what that would look like, and it'll probably be a short-term arrangement of either emergency or respite care while those visa things are happening in the background. Because the last thing you'd want is needing to leave the country when you've had a child in care with you and unexpectedly. So we definitely want to prevent that from happening. We've got another question. I found that setting clear expectations to the agency a lot easier when determining the right placements for you and your families. Yeah, absolutely. So just being really clear as you're going through the process. The training is very interactive. You ask questions, you work with, facilitators from the agency. You can learn a lot more. The assessment process itself, when you're meeting with that assessor from the agency, allows you to have a lot of discussions there, and it's not going to be all flowery and rosy and that this is going to be the easiest thing you've ever done. It's never going to look like that. It's going to be honest and exploring, okay, what is going to be the best fit. This is going to be an incredibly rewarding step for you to take in your life, but it's also going to be challenging. So what can we do to make sure this goes as smoothly as it can, and what supports do you have in place, and how can we support you to make sure that you provide great care for a child that comes into your care. So it is really important, I agree with you, to provide those clear expectations of what's going to work for you and what your preferences are and what you're comfortable doing. Definitely, that's a great comment. In terms of having contact with their family, so children in care do have family contact, and you learn a lot about that in your training as a foster carer, but the contact arrangements are determined by their court orders and their case plans. So as a foster carer, you'll be informed of what that looks like. You'll know when the child's going to care, and you'll be expected to support that to be as positive as possible. So we know that a child being connected with their culture and being connected with their family allows them those opportunities to heal and thrive and have that safe and secure identity built up. Especially for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children as well. So if you are caring with an Aboriginal controlled community organization or an ACO, then you are provided additional supports in place to make sure that you're helping that child connect with their culture and to develop that cultural identity and that sense of belonging. And every question that you have is answered along the way, and it is really holistic and thorough wraparound supports there. So let's just see if there's any more questions. We already spoke about so daily routines and getting support for that. So you do, if when you are offered a placement, you will hear about where the child's school is, and then you can identify what will school pickups and childcare and things like that look like. So all those things can be negotiated with the agency. If you are looking to care for babies, as you can imagine, a lot of people put their hands up for that. So then it's identifying what would be the best fit for that child. So if you're full-time working and wanting to care for babies, but someone is at home and they wouldn't require childcare, those sorts of things do get considered. But in terms of supporting children to go to school, while you're caring for them and they're school aged, then they will be doing that, and you will, be able to support them either in taking public transport, or if it's within reach of being able to drop them off, that's something you'll discuss with the agency. If you need transport support, all those things can be considered and discussed, and you can start those conversations early on while you're in the assessment as well. Do we have any more questions? Another question that comes up quite a bit is, if you've applied as a single carer and then you have a new partner that comes into your life, what will that look like? And it's likely that that'll be chatted a little bit about during your assessment as well. But the expectation would be that you would inform the agency, the relevant checks would be done, and then if you were introducing that person to that child, the agency would be chatting with you about what would be the best way to do that if it's been deemed appropriate. So it's just about making sure that it's, consistent and, informed and considering what the needs of the child are and how we best meet those needs. Any other questions? Working with children's checks, so that is something that you get, or you have to get done as a foster care. So if you have one already as an employer or as an employee, then you add the foster care agency to that. If you work in a profession such as teachers that generally have a different type of check and are exempt from that, then you still are expected to get the volunteer working with children check. So the agency will support you on how to do that. Police check, same thing. Even if you had a recent one done, then you do have to do another one. There's no cost to you involved, and the agency does support you with that. But fostering really is, it's a really wonderful undertaking, and the process is very transparent and flexible to help you identify what the best fit for you will be. So anyone can make an impact on a child's life. And at the moment, we really need foster carers, whether it's respite emergency, short-term or long-term. Like we really need people to consider opening up their homes and providing that support to a child. So if that's something that you have really specific questions that you want to have a chat about, feel free to give us a call. The phone number is 1-800-013-088. You'll get linked in with myself and we can have a chat to see what you're curious about or whether it's the right fit for you, what the next steps are. Or you can inquire directly with an agency through our website. When you put in your postcode, it'll tell you all the agencies that are in your area. You can identify one of them based on the little blurbs there or doing your own research, or you can be randomly allocated to one based on the level of need for agencies. So feel free to also have a look at that. But at this stage, I think we will start closing the session down unless there's any more questions. But we do keep these sessions recorded, so we'll keep them available on our Facebook page. They also get uploaded onto our YouTube. So if you've missed out on anything or you feel like having a read through it later, you're more than welcome to have a recap of that. And just know that, every step of the way that you're never alone as you take on this journey. So feel free to ask any questions and come along.